is a change you think that's, it started obviously with the state of the economy. Is it going to stick, and is it going to stay that way, or is it going to return to a norm?
I don't know the answer to that question, and I think, you'd ask a lot of different people in this room, and everybody would probably have their own answer to that question. From where I stand, we're doing and thinking about ways of doing things that make sense, and whether a client has 10 times the amount of money, they still make sense. So I think that a lot of the principles and a lot of the things that have changed are really going to stay consistent and are going to continue following the end of the credit crunch or the end of the recession, or whatever the word that you use depending on the part of the world in which you reside. Yeah,
I mean, it's one of those things. I think it's driven a new discipline. People have got to, they force themselves to learn about this domain. So just to help us visualize, I mean, you've talked about certain kind of services or products or campaigns, not wanting to obviously make this a Syncapse promotion, but is there anything you can tell us which will help us understand, for example, how social media can be exploited to its fullest?
Exploited is such a harsh word. Utilized.
Utilize highest ROI.
I think when we're looking at, from the syndication of video content presentation earlier today, I think a lot of those same principles are applying within the social space as well. So a lot of the programs are, if somebody is having a conversation, I promised our staff today that I would not use the word fundamentally. So if I've used it a couple of times, I owe a number of people $20 following this presentation. I think that it's about being able to extend that conversation and extend that word of mouth. And a lot of the products that we've been working on have been allowing that to take shape and that to happen. So, if you have consumers who are having conversations about a particular brand in Facebook, they want to be having conversations about that brand, in MySpace or within OpenID or within iGoogle as well. So how are we extending, word of mouth and allowing those ambassadors who are saying something positive to have a much larger voice? And a lot of our programs, a lot of the technologies that we have developed and continue to develop are really around extending that word of mouth to a much larger audience, so that when someone is saying something very positive, it does get carried out and is heard by, many, many more people.
Mm-hmm. So those kinds of communications happen kind of in two ways broadly. One is it's campaign focused. It's a brand, they're going out and doing a campaign. And somewhat overlapping with that, but separately, is it's media properties. And we've got different constituents in the room. Are there different approaches that you would take to each of those?
Yeah, and we have both as clients. I think it's interesting for me, to what you just said from a campaign perspective. I would say that less than 10% of our business is actually focused on campaigns. Everything else is about 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We're not just focusing on campaigns. Obviously, the challenge for media companies is syndicating that content out to wherever consumers are, and then at some point figuring out how the hell do we make money from this. And I think there's a number of great examples and people who are talking about that across this weekend. And as well on the consumer side is, how do we allow people to have a relationship with our brand where they are, whether that be Facebook or MySpace or Twitter or wherever else. How are we allowing that to take place? Because otherwise we're building little lands of silos around only one community, where we recognize that people are going to want to have conversations with our brand across 10 or 20 different places, but how can we really focus on being able to connect those people together? So I think a lot of the principles stay the same between the two. Obviously, one's about driving revenue or driving brand, and the so I got confused there. One's about driving revenue, and the other one is about driving brand or driving sales.
Right, exactly. So I want to reserve some time for open questions. So is there any questions at this point?
Thank you. Thanks for the session. One of the things that I don't understand, and I keep talking to people, and all the things that I hear is about the site that already have, like Facebook, MySpace, they already have their audiences. But where do we have, if you're starting a new online, whatever, TV channel or website, where do you find your advertising? How do you get the audience for it, or how do you get advertised, even if you have a special target audience?
So is it, how do you get advertisers, or how do you get audience?
How do you get advertiser for sponsors and advertisers on your side in the private sites?
So that still is in a lot of cases a challenge, especially from when I was out, on the media side. You still have a lot of media agencies who are only focused on, we're only going to have a conversation with sites that have this size of audience. And if you don't have this size of audience and we can't, affect this amount of reach, you're too small in the plan, we don't want to have a conversation with you because you're going to eat up too much of our time, we're not going to make money, and it's not worth it. But that being said, I think that there are a lot of opportunities to engage with brands and to start having a dialogue with them when sites are smaller, and looking at opportunities to create content partnerships and to extend what they're doing from other properties onto those properties and to help grow it up. One of the things that we always have conversations with our clients about is, why are you creating a microsite? And there's tons of companies that we ask that question to. Why are we creating a microsite for this? Well, we did last time. Yeah, but why? Because we did the time before. We did the time before that. Well, why did you do the time before that? Because we did before that. And they're like, they really honestly can't give you an answer of why they're doing it that way. But I think the opportunity for a lot of emerging media properties is being able to find ways to really leverage what an advertiser wants to do, where they don't need to create some standalone little island that is going to require huge media to get people to go to, and to integrate what their content is, or what their utility is, or what their messaging is into that site, and say, we're going to partner together. I'm going to add a lot of value to you by doing this. You're going to add a lot of value to me by whether it be promoting the site, leveraging the traffic that you're already getting across the other sites, and really being able to take advantage of that and drive it forward. It becomes really hard to have, as a smaller site, it becomes really hard to have a conversation with an advertiser just based on audience, because the audience in a lot of cases isn't large enough in the larger context of what they're doing. But I think if you can get really integrated and develop something that is going to add value, that doesn't require them, that they're already doing, doesn't require them to build that standalone island, ultimately then you can start to see some successful results, whether it be revenue from the advertiser, or whether it be using those advertisers' dollars to help grow your site or grow your business and help keep the flow coming and growing your audience and growing the site.
So what is the minimum that you have for you guys or for the advertiser? What is the minimum audience that you have?
It's different for everybody. A lot of I see a lot of sites in the 500,000 unique user range. I see a lot of people who are the million unique user range. It really depends on the advertiser, and depends on the site, and depends on the strategy, and depends on how micro-targeted that specific strategy is. So there are advertisers that are doing stuff on smaller sites, but the majority of the revenue is still going to those sites who have over 1 million monthly unique visitors on Comscore.